Chapter 358. A Muslim Girl in the West, Section 11. As soon as the Athenian court saved Dr. Ibtihal from the first attempt that made by the Athenian police to extradite her back to her country of origin, Jennifer Jackson rushed back to Chad. She did not tell Dr. Ibtihal about the kidnap attempt that some Sudanese soldiers made on her Christian lover. She did neither tell her that her lover was shot and seriously wounded during that attack. She decided to go and find out what was the condition of Dr. Samir first. When she arrived in Chad, Jennifer found Dr. Samir was fighting with death. Therefore, she decided not to tell Dr. Ibtihal anything about her lover. Jennifer left a small note for Dr. Ibtihal informing her that she had to go back to Africa for some emergency case. She had not left any contact number or address. Meanwhile, Dr. Ibtihal was faced with the second attempt that made by the Sudanese embassy to send her back to Sudan. The only means of communication between Dr. Ibtihal and Dr. Samir was Jennifer Jackson. But then that means of linking the two unjustly separated lovers was ended when the Good Samaritan woman returned to Chad. Jennifer did neither phone nor send any letter to Dr. Ibtihal. A month passed since she left Europe and returned to Africa. Dr. Ibtihal did not contact her lover nor talk to him since the day she was torn apart from him in Sudan after their first arrest in the Eritrean border. When she came to know about his whereabouts from Jennifer, she could not contact him. At that time there was phone connection problem in Chad. When that connection problem was solved, the Athenian police rearrested her. On the same day Dr. Ibtihal was released, Jennifer received a message from the medical team in the refugees camps informing her about the kidnap attempt of Dr. Samir. During this time Dr. Ibtihal began to know more about the life in Athens. Some Sudanese student girls came to her apartment and introduced themselves to her. They expressed their sympathy toward her many tragedies that befell her in Sudan and Athens. Those girls were Sudanese communists who did not believe in any religion or any god. However, those girls opened up her life to thousands of other Sudanese students studying in Athens. As soon as they met her, the girls invited her to their place. Dr. Ibtihal was so happy to meet such open-minded girls. From them she came to know that there were many Sudanese students studying in Athens. She learned too that there was a Sudanese student club. Many students gathered daily in that club for socializing with each other. The girls promised to take her to the students' club and introduce her to their other friends. Nadia, Sarah, and Badriya were the girls who approached Dr. Ibtihal in her apartment and introduced themselves to her. Those three girls were so westernized. When she saw them, Dr. Ibtihal could hardly believe that they were Sudanese. All three girls were dressed up in short pants and tied t-shirts. Their hairs were opened. They did everything they could to their faces and hairs in order to turn themselves into Western girls. Dr. Ibtihal did not like their clothes, but she admired their personalities. They were so friendly and loving. From the first week they met her, Nadia, Sarah, and Badriya took Dr. Ibtihal to the Sudanese Students' Club, SSC. The SSC was not a nice place as Dr. Ibtihal expected. It was an arena of struggle and fight between the Muslim extremists and the Muslim moderates. Among the extremists there were the fanatic supporters of the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad and the violent Muslim brothers and sisters. Among the moderates there were the communists and the secularists. Between those two rightists and leftists there were those students who belonged to neither and had nothing to do with either. Accordingly, inside the SSC, Dr. Ibtihal saw those girls who dressed up in Islamic hijabs that covered their bodies from heads to feet and those girls who hardly had any clothes on their bodies. Likewise, she saw some boys who had their beards grew and reached up to their bellies and those boys who dressed up like disco dancers. Dr. Ibtihal spent her first visit to the SSC sitting around a table and chatting with Nadia, Sarah, and Badriya and their boyfriends. Her visit went unnoticed by Muslim extremists until she left the club. Nonetheless, the Muslim brothers and sisters came to know about her visit a few minutes after she left the club. Those Muslim extremists became outraged when they came to know that the apostate Sudanese girl entered the students' club without their permission and knowledge. All Sudanese students in Athens criticized Nadia, Sarah, and Badriya for bringing in the SSC, a dissident Sudanese woman who was not even a student. The Sudanese Student Association, SSA, called for general meeting to discuss such a serious issue. The meeting had two agendas: what should be the punishment of those three communist girls and what should be the stand of the Sudanese students toward the dissident Sudanese woman. Some extremist members of the SSA suggested that all the Sudanese students in Athens should boycott that rebellious woman and punish any student that talks or associates with her. Some moderate members believe that such a decision should be left for each individual student. Other liberal members came up with the idea of engaging with her in debate. The Executive Committee left those three suggestions to the General Assembly to vote upon. The Muslim Brothers and Sisters group raised serious objection to such a decision. They said that it is against the tenets of Islam to vote on a matter that had been already decided by God and His Prophet. They quoted verses from the Quran and Hadith from Sahih al-Bukhari to support their point. According to them, Dr. Ibtihal had already fallen off the Islamic community and greeting her or associating with her would be considered kufr or unbelief. The moderates and the liberals rejected their arguments and requested the Executive Committee to place the matter on voting. In order to appease the Muslim brothers and sisters, the Executive Committee suggested that the General Assembly should first vote on whether those three suggestions being placed under voting or not. Every member was asked to come forward and write yes or no in a sheet of paper and place it inside the ballot box. While this primary voting was going on, the Muslim brothers and sisters threatened some students and restrained them from voting. None of the Muslim brothers and sisters had voted. Out of the 2,500 Sudanese students, only 1,800 had casted their votes. The result came out that 1,000 students voted yes and 800 no. The Muslim brothers and sisters understood that they made big mistake by not voting. The extremist students were 500 students, including the supporters of the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. Wherefore, the extremists decided to participate in the second voting. The Executive Committee wrote the three suggestions in papers and asked each student to circle one choice only. 1. All students should boycott her and punish any student who talks with her. 2. Such a decision should be left for each individual student. 3. The Sudanese students should engage in debate with her. All the students voted on those three bizarre proposals. The Muslim brothers and sisters and the supporters of the Sunnah used every available means of intimidation and coercion in order to force the students to vote in the favor of the first suggestion. Some new students were pulled out of the hall and strictly warned that they would be beaten if they did not choose the first suggestion. Some students were made to promise on oath by placing their hands on Quran that they would choose the first proposal. Some Muslim terrorist sisters beat up some girls who openly challenged the bullying of the Muslim group. Besides using violent approach, the Muslim brothers, sisters, and supporters resorted to the religious sentiments and blackmailing. They quoted verses from the Quran that promised rewards for those who followed the way of Allah and punishment to those who strayed from it. The general meeting began at 4 p.m. and ended at 2 a.m. During and after those 10 hours, many unpleasant things happened to many students. Before we mentioned what happened, we should see what the Executive Committee had declared regarding the three proposals. The first proposal received 800 votes, the second received 500 votes, and the final proposal achieved 1,200 votes. When the result was announced, the Muslim extremists accused the voting committee of dishonesty. In order to appease them, the voting committee invited 10 of their leaders to come and recount the votes. When the recounting confirmed the result, the Muslim terrorists removed their anger on the weaker vessels first. Many liberal and moderate girls were beaten up and abused. In front of the hall, the Muslim brothers, sisters, and supporters engaged in physical fight with many students. The fight was so serious that many students were badly injured. Many students were taken to the hospital with serious injuries. That night, many Sudanese students were arrested. The majority of the apprehended students were Muslim extremists.